Picture yourself strapped into a cushy first-class seat, 3,5,000 feet above the earth, the world below a distant patchwork of clouds and faint lights. The hum of the jet engines wraps you in a cocoon of calm. Your drink is cold in your hand, and you're just settling in, maybe flipping through a movie or sipping a glass of wine, when suddenly a sharp sound slices through the serenity. A flight attendant, the very person you trust to keep this flight smooth and comfortable, slaps a crying toddler right in front of you. Gasps ripple through the cabin like a shock wave. Your heart skips a beat. You're stunned, frozen in your seat, right? Now, brace yourself, because here's the twist that'll flip your entire perspective upside down. That toddler's father isn't just some random guy in a suit. He's the man who owns the entire airline. And in mere minutes, that flight attendant's career doesn't just nosedive. It crashes and burns in a blazing fireball of consequences she never saw coming. Welcome to Top Point, where we don't just spin stories. We dive deep into their beating hearts, unravel their souls, and pull out lessons that stick with you long after the screen fades to black. I'm your guide on this wild ride, and today we're boarding a flight where pride collides with power, and the fallout is so swift it'll leave you speechless. Drop a comment below where in the world are you watching from, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on those notifications because, trust me, you're not ready for what's about to unfold. This isn't just about a slap or a job lost. It's about what happens when you think you're untouchable, only to find out the ground you're standing on belongs to someone else entirely. The real jolt isn't even the slap itself. It's the quiet, unshakable force of a man who didn't need to raise his voice to bring her whole world tumbling down. One moment she's ruling the cabin like a queen on her throne. The next, she's a ghost, erased by her own hand, and we're left watching, captivated, as the pieces fall. Let's set the scene high in the sky, where this drama begins to unfold. The flight is cruising at 3,5,000 feet. Far above the chaos of the earth below, where the air feels thin and the ground is nothing but a memory. The first-class cabin glows with the kind of privilege most people only dream of. Plush leather seats cradle passengers, soft lights cast a warm golden haze, and the faint clink of wine glasses fills the air as people unwind. Some passengers are scrolling through movies on their personal screens, others are napping under cozy blankets, the steady hum of the engines lulling them into a sense of peace. It's a sanctuary of order, a bubble of luxury where everything is meticulously controlled, and at the heart of it all stands Ms. Whitmore, a senior flight attendant who's made this cabin her empire. Her blonde hair is pinned into a tight, flawless bun, her uniform pressed to a razor's edge, her posture so rigid it could snap steel in half. She's been at this for years, maybe even decades, and this space is her throne room. Every sound, every shuffle, every breath, she controls it all with a hawk-like precision. A laugh that's too loud, a tray left out of place, they're threats to her perfect reign, and she crushes those threats without a second thought. She's not just a flight attendant. She's the queen of this airborne kingdom, the one who decides how the story unfolds. And to her, perfection isn't a goal, it's a demand, a non-negotiable standard she'll stop at nothing to maintain. A few rows back, the atmosphere shifts slightly, a ripple of unease in her otherwise pristine domain. There sits Amira, a young mother with tired eyes, cradling her 2-year-old son, Cairo, in her lap. He's not screaming or throwing a tantrum, just restless, squirming against her, his soft whimpers barely piercing the engine's steady drone. Amira's doing what any mother would do in this moment, rocking him gently, whispering soothing words like, "Shh, baby, it's okay, sleep now," tracing small circles on his back with a hand that's steady despite her bone-deep exhaustion. She's been at this for hours. Any parent who's flown with a toddler knows that weariness, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes every minute feel like an eternity, but she's trying her best. To you or me, Cairo is just a kid being a kid, a little bundle of energy cooped up too long in a confined space, fighting the boredom and discomfort of a long flight. But to Miss Whitmore, he's something else entirely. A crack in her flawless world, a glitch in her perfect system, a challenge to the order she's spent years enforcing. She's trained herself to spot these disruptions, to stamp them out before they can spread, because, in her mind, a child's whimper isn't a plea for understanding, It's a direct assault on her authority, a test of her control. And Miss Whitmore doesn't fail tests. She's built her entire career on this kind of control, on making sure every passenger knows their place. And Cairo's restlessness is an affront to that meticulously crafted order. She can't let it stand. Not here, not in her kingdom. The tension ignites like a spark hitting dry tinder. Miss Whitmore strides over, her heels clicking against the cabin floor like the tick of a countdown timer, each step a warning of the storm about to break. She stops beside Amire's row, arms folded tightly across her chest, her smile thin and brittle, barely masking the irritation simmering beneath the surface. "Ma'am," she says, her voice sharp but hushed, controlled enough not to wake the dozing passengers around them. "You need to keep him quiet. People are trying to relax." Amira looks up, her face a mixture of fatigue and patience, her voice soft as she replies, "I'm trying. He's just tired." It's a human moment, a mother reaching out for a shred of compassion in a sterile, high-altitude world, a quiet plea for understanding. But Ms. Whitmore doesn't hear a plea, she hears an excuse, a dodge from someone who doesn't grasp the rules of her domain. "Try harder," she mutters, her tone laced with disdain, her patience fraying at the edges like a threadbare rope. She's heard every excuse in the book over the years, passengers complaining about delays, demanding upgrades, whining about their seats, and she's tired of it, tired of the endless stream of problems she's forced to solve. To her, Amira is just another issue, another piece out of place in her perfect puzzle, another challenge to her authority that needs to be dealt with swiftly. Then it happens. Cairo shifts again in Amira's lap, his tiny foot brushing against Miss Whitmore's skirt. It's not a kick, not even a nudge, just the innocent wiggle of a toddler too young to know better, too small to understand the rules of this high-stakes game. But Miss Whitmore reacts as if she's been personally attacked, her body stiffening, her eyes narrowing, her breath catching in her throat, like she's been slapped herself. Without a second's pause, without a moment of reflection, she reaches down, grabs Cairo's little wrist and slaps his hand. A quick, sharp tap, not loud enough to echo far, but enough to make him flinch, enough to turn his soft whimper into a startled cry, enough to freeze Amira in her seat, her wide eyes locked on Miss Whitmore in disbelief. The sound isn't deafening, but it's enough to snap every head in the row toward them, mouths falling open in stunned silence, the air in the cabin thickening with shock and tension. Passengers who were half asleep or lost in their screens now sit upright, their attention riveted on the scene unfolding before them, a ripple of unease spreading through the once calm space. Let's pause right here and unpack this moment, because it hits us like a punch to the gut, doesn't it? Why does it feel so jarring, so wrong? It's not just the act itself, it's the betrayal woven into it. Flight attendants are supposed to be the caretakers of the sky, the stewards of our safety and comfort, the ones who make the unnatural act of hurtling through the air in a metal tube feel safe, even soothing. They're the ones we trust to keep us calm when turbulence hits, to bring us a blanket when we're cold, to smile and reassure us when we're nervous. Miss Whitmore didn't just break a rule. She shattered that trust, turned a sanctuary into a battlefield, and left everyone watching, passengers and viewers alike, reeling from the violation. But let's dig deeper into her mind for a moment. What pushed her to this brink, to this point of no return? Was it a bad day? Exhaustion from a long shift? A passenger who'd snapped at her earlier and left her on edge? Or was it something deeper, something etched into her over years of wearing that uniform, of wielding that authority? Imagine her life for a second. Decades of flights, countless passengers, some grateful, many entitled, blurring into a haze of exhaustion and repetition. She's dealt with the worst of humanity, the rude businessmen demanding more champagne, the families who let their kids run wild in the aisles, the elderly passengers who need help with every little thing. She's worked through delays, through storms, through nights where she barely slept, all to climb the ranks to earn her place as the queen of first class. She's not a cartoon villain twirling a mustache. She's a woman who's poured her entire life into this job, who's sacrificed sleep, holidays, relationships, all to be somebody, to be the one who sets the tone, who commands respect with a flick of her wrist. In her mind, she's not just a flight attendant. She's the gatekeeper of perfection, the one who keeps the chaos at bay, who ensures that first class remains a haven of luxury and order. That slap wasn't about Cairo or a mirror. It was about her, about proving her control, about showing that no one, not even a 2-year-old, can unravel the order she's fought so hard to maintain. It's a tragic kind of blindness, a refusal to see the humanity in front of her, to see a tired mother and a restless child as anything more than obstacles to her perfection, threats to her reign. I felt that edge myself, that urge to snap when control starts to slip away, and I bet you have too. Picture this. I'm on a late-night train after a grueling 12-hour workday, my nerves frayed, my patience worn to a threadbare shred. A kid behind me, maybe 5 years old, keeps kicking my seat, each thump like a needle in my spine. Thump, thump, thump. My jaw clenches, my hands grip the armrests, and I'm seconds from whirling around with a sharp, "Can you stop him?" I'm exhausted, irritated, ready to lash out because I just want peace. Just want the world to bend to my need for a moment of quiet. But then I catch his mom's eye. Frazzled, juggling bags, whispering, sorry, sorry, under her breath as she tries to calm him down. She's not failing, she's fighting, doing her best in a tough spot, just like Amira on that plane. So I don't snap. I force a smile, turn around, and say, "Need a hand with those bags?" She exhales, grateful, and the kicking stops. It's a small moment, but it stuck with me, taught me something Miss Whitmore missed. See the struggle, not the noise. She didn't see Amira's exhaustion, Cairo's innocence. She saw a threat to her throne, a challenge to her carefully constructed reign. And that's the first crack in her kingdom, the spark that's about to set everything ablaze. We've all been there, haven't we? That moment where irritation bubbles up, where you're tempted to lash out because the world won't bend to your will. A slow cashier at the grocery store, a loud neighbor keeping you awake, a coworker who drops the ball on a project. We're human, we feel that frustration, that we need to assert control when things spiral. But Miss Whitmore didn't just feel it. She acted on it, and not with words, but with a hand. A slap that crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She'd spent years honing that edge, that belief that she was above the chaos, above the people she served, that her authority was ironclad, unbreakable. She didn't just want quiet, she wanted submission, obedience to her rules, her vision of perfection. And that hunger for control, that refusal to see the humanity in front of her, is what's about to bring her entire empire crashing down, piece by shattered piece. That slap's echo still hangs in the air, a sharp note of betrayal in the once calm cabin, when a voice cuts through like a blade through silk. "What did you just do?" The words are calm, measured but heavy, like thunder rolling slow across a darkening sky, promising a storm. Every head swivels toward the source. Zayden Gray, seated 2 rows ahead, folding a business magazine shut with deliberate care. He's been invisible until this moment. Quiet, unassuming. Just another suit blending into the first-class crowd, unnoticed amidst the luxury. Miss Whitmore barely flicks her eyes his way, brushing him off with a cool, "The child was disruptive." She's still the queen of this cabin, or so she thinks, her hands clasped in front of her like she's just tidied up a minor inconvenience, a small wrinkle in her perfect world. Then Zayden stands, unbuckling his seatbelt with a slow, purposeful click that seems to echo louder than the slap itself, and he steps into the aisle. His gaze locks on her, steady, unreadable, and he speaks again, his voice low but carrying the weight of a mountain. "You put your hands on my son?" And there it is. The twist that flips the entire story on its head, the moment the chessboard turns upside down and the game changes forever. That restless toddler she smacked? His father owns the airline. Whispers erupt like wildfire through the cabin. That's him. The owner? Zayden Gray. And the color drains from Miss Whitmore's face, leaving it pale as bone, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. She didn't just cross a passenger, she crossed the one man who could snap her career in two with a single breath, the man who holds her entire world in the palm of his hand. But here's what grabs me about this moment, what makes it so riveting. Zayden doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. His voice stays low, his posture calm, yet the weight of his words fills the plane like a storm about to break. a quiet force that commands the attention of everyone on board. "Get me the captain," he says, and the wheels of her downfall start spinning with a quiet, inevitable force, a machine set in motion that she has no power to stop. This is why we're glued to this story, why we can't look away. The power shift is seismic. Miss Whitmore thought she held the reins, her uniform starched, her rules ironclad, this cabin her personal fiefdom where she reigns supreme. Then Xaden rises, and it's checkmate in an instant. It's not just that he's the CEO, it's how he wields that authority. He's not some brash, loudmouthed executive hurling threats or throwing his weight around to make a point. He's a father protecting his family, a leader testing the integrity of the empire he's built from the ground up. Xaden Grey could fly private. He owns a fleet of jets, has pilots on call 24/7, could travel in luxury far removed from the chaos of commercial flights. But he chooses to sit here in first class, blending in with the passenger. Why? To watch, to observe, to see how his staff treats the people who trust his airline with their journeys, their safety, their comfort. He's not here to flaunt his wealth or status. He's here to guard his vision, to ensure his employees uphold the standards he's set, to feel the pulse of the business he's poured his life into. Ms. Whitmore's power is all surface, rules, rank, a clipboard she swings like a scepter to maintain her illusion of control, a facade she's spent years perfecting. Xaden's power. It's bone deep, forged in purpose, not performance, and when it collides with her fragile illusion, hers doesn't stand a chance. It crumbles like a house of cards in a hurricane. Amira finds her voice in this charged moment, and her words are a quiet blade of their own. "You don't get to decide who deserves kindness." Her tone is softer than Xaden's, but it cuts just as deep, slicing through the tension like a knife through butter, and Ms. Whitmore flinches as if she's been struck herself. Because it's true, she judged Cairo as unworthy, a pest in her pristine kingdom, a problem to be solved rather than a child to be cared for, a human being deserving of patience and understanding. Those words hang in the air like a verdict, exposing her for what she truly is, not a leader but a tyrant, small and petty, hiding behind her uniform and her rules, using them as a shield to mask her own failings. Passengers stir, the murmur growing. Some dig out their phones, not filming yet, just searching, piecing together who Xaden Grey is, their fingers flying across screens as they confirm the whispers. A man mutters to his wife, "That's the CEO, the guy who owns this airline," and the realization ripples through the crowd like a wave, each passenger turning to their neighbor, eyes wide, mouths agape. Miss Whitmore's throat bobs as she swallows hard, her mind racing. It can't be. I checked the passenger list, he wasn't supposed to be here. But there's no mistaking him now, no escaping the reality of who she's crossed. She's caught in a trap of her own making, and the net is tightening around her with every passing second, her carefully constructed world unraveling, thread by thread. I've seen this kind of quiet strength before, the kind that doesn't need to yell to command a room, and it's the kind of power that leaves a lasting impression. A friend of mine owned a small diner years back, a cozy little spot where the coffee was always hot and the regulars knew each other by name, a place where you felt at home the moment you walked in. One night a customer, some guy in a flashy tie, lost it on a waitress over a burger that came out cold. He was loud, vicious, calling her names that made everyone in the place cringe, his voice echoing off the walls as he berated her in front of a packed house. My friend stepped out from the kitchen, still in his apron, and walked over to the table. "I'm the owner here," he said, his voice low but steady as a rock, unshakable in its calm. "We don't talk to my people like that." The guy shrank like a balloon losing air, his bluster evaporating in an instant, and he paid his bill and bolted, not because my friend yelled or made a scene, but because his calm carried a weight that no tantrum could match, a quiet authority that demanded respect without raising a decibel. Xaden Grey is cut from that same cloth. He doesn't need to scream or make a spectacle. His presence roars for him. His resolve speaks louder than any outburst ever could. Miss Whitmore didn't see it coming. She was too busy polishing her own fragile crown, too focused on maintaining her illusion of control to notice the real power sitting just 2 rows ahead, watching, waiting, ready to act. The captain steps out from the cockpit, a man in his late 40s with neatly combed hair and an air of quiet authority that contrasts sharply with the tension now filling the cabin. "What's going on?" he asks, his eyes flicking from Xaden to Miss Whitmore, sensing the storm that's brewing. Xaden's response is simple, delivered with that same unshakable calm. "Your lead flight attendant thought it was appropriate to put her hands on my child." The captain's brow creases, disbelief flickering across his face as he turns to her, his tone even but edged with urgency. "Is this true?" Miss Whitmore stammers, her voice thin and cracking under the weight of scrutiny. I may have misjudged the situation. It's a flimsy defense, a shield made of paper, and it's already tearing apart under the pressure of the moment. Xaden doesn't let it stand, doesn't give her an inch to wiggle free. "She's done," he says. Just 2 words, calm as a judge's gavel dropping, yet they carry the finality of a death knell, echoing through the cabin with undeniable authority. The captain nods to a junior attendant nearby, "Get operations on the line," and then turns back to Miss Whitmore, his voice firm. "You're relieved of duty, effective immediately." Gasps ripple through the cabin like a wave, passengers exchanging wide-eyed glances, some whispering to each other, others pulling out their phones to discreetly film the unfolding drama. Miss Whitmore stumbles back a step, her hands trembling at her sides, her voice breaking as she tries to protest. "No, you can't." But Xaden cuts her off, an eyebrow raised in quiet defiance. "I just did." Let's linger here for a moment, dive into the emotional undercurrent of this scene. What's she feeling as her world tilts off its axis, as the kingdom she's built over decades starts to crumble beneath her feet? Panic is clawing at her chest, her heart pounding so hard she can hear it over the hum of the engines, a relentless drumbeat of dread. Shame burns her face as every eye in the cabin turns to her, judging her, stripping away the authority she's spent years cultivating with a single damning act. She's been the enforcer for so long, clipping orders, smoothing her skirt, keeping chaos at bay with a flick of her wrist, her voice sharp enough to cut through any resistance. Now she's the chaos, the one being judged, her kingdom slipping through her fingers like sand, and there's nothing she can do to stop it. But Xaden, he's not here to gloat or revel in her downfall, not here to make a spectacle of her shame. He adjusts the cuffs of his blazer, his arm sliding around Amira's shoulders, his other hand resting gently on Cairo's back, the toddler still clinging to his mother, his cries softened now, but his tiny body still trembling from the shock. Xaden's not here for vengeance, he's here for justice, to protect his family and ensure the vision of his airline isn't tainted by someone who's forgotten what it means to serve. That's power with a soul. Using influence to shield those who need it, not to shatter those who don't deserve it, but to hold them accountable for their actions. Think about the moments in your own life where you've seen power shift like this, where the tables turned so swiftly it left you reeling. Maybe it was a boss who ruled by fear, barking orders to feel big, only to be humbled by someone higher up who led with quiet strength. Someone who didn't need to yell to make their point. Or maybe it was smaller, a teacher who snapped at a student, only to be called out by a parent who spoke with calm resolve, their words cutting deeper than any shout ever could. I've seen it too, in that diner with my friend, and I've felt it myself in smaller ways. Once, I watched a manager at a retail store berate a cashier in front of a packed line over a scanned item, nothing major, just a small mistake that could have been fixed with a kind word. She thought it'd show control, make her look strong, prove she was in charge. The owner happened to be there, shopping incognito, blending in with the crowd. He didn't storm in yelling or make a scene, he just walked up, said, "That's not how we treat people here," and fired her on the spot. No drama, no fuss. Just done, a decision made with quiet certainty. Xaden Grey operates the same way. He doesn't need a spotlight or a shouting match, he needs results, and he gets them with a precision that's almost surgical in its efficiency. Miss Whitmore built her throne on sand, and Xaden's quiet authority is the tide coming in to wash it all away, to sweep her out to sea with the wreckage of her own making. Her reign is over, his has just begun, all without a single raised voice. And now, as the captain takes control and the cabin holds its breath, We're left on the edge of our seats, wondering what happens when the plane lands and the full weight of those consequences comes crashing down. The plane touches down with a heavy thud, the wheels kissing the tarmac, but for Miss Whitmore, this landing isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of a far steeper descent, a free fall she can't stop. A security officer waits at the gate, not for routine checks, not for baggage issues, but for her, his stance firm, his expression unreadable, a silent sentinel of her impending doom. Zodden's already airside, speaking in low tones with a group of executives in tailored suits, his words clipped and final. Escort her. Make sure she's held accountable. She's led off the aircraft, her badge demanded on the spot. Her fingers tremble as she unhooks it, the lanyard she's worn like a medal for years, now a relic of a life she's losing. A symbol of authority that means nothing anymore. Her uniform, once a symbol of command, is now a hollow shell, hanging on her like a costume past its play. A costume that no longer fits the role she thought she'd play forever. Her heels click hollowly on the jet bridge as she's escorted, not as a crew member, but as cargo, a disgraced figure in a space she used to rule with an iron grip. Outside, colleagues avert their eyes, pretending not to see her shame, their avoidance a silent condemnation. Passengers whisper behind their hands, some sneaking glances as they shuffle past, others outright staring, soaking in the scandal unfolding in real time like it's a live performance they didn't expect to witness. A video, grainy, angled but unmistakable, has already leaked online, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. Her hand striking Cairo's, his cry piercing the air, Amira's shocked face frozen in the frame, a damning loop playing over and over for the world to judge. The comments flood in, hundreds, then thousands. She's trash. Ban her for life. First class, my foot. Each one burying her deeper in a grave she dug herself, each one a nail in the coffin of her career, her reputation, her everything. This isn't just a job loss, it's an identity erased, a life dismantled in the span of a single flight. Miss Whitmore has spent years, decades, building this life. Late nights on red-eye flights, holidays missed for the sake of the airline's schedule, relationships frayed to threads as she chased the title of somebody, the status of the Queen of First Class. She wasn't just a flight attendant, she was the flight attendant, the one who set the tone, who demanded respect with a flick of her wrist, who walked through terminals with her head held high, her badge gleaming like a crown. Now she's nobody, a ghost in a terminal that used to bow to her presence, a shadow in a space where she once shone. But let's not paint her as a tragic heroine or a victim of circumstance. She brought this on herself, built this pyre with her own hands. That slap wasn't a momentary lapse, a slip of judgment in a heated moment. It was a choice, forged in a furnace of arrogance she'd been stoking for years, a fire she'd fed with every dismissive glance, every sharp word, every passenger she treated as an obstacle rather than a person. To her, Cairo wasn't a child. He was noise, a glitch in her perfect system, something to be corrected rather than cared for, a problem to be solved with a swift, decisive hand. Zadden Gray didn't ruin her life. He just lit the match she'd already set, letting her own actions burn her world to the ground in a blaze she couldn't extinguish. She had years to learn, to soften, to see the humanity in the passengers she served, but she didn't, choosing instead to armor herself with rules and rank, to see herself as above the people she was meant to care for. And now the bill for that blindness has come due, and it's steeper than she ever imagined. A debt she'll be paying for the rest of her life. I've seen echoes of this kind of fall, moments where someone's pride led them straight to ruin, where their refusal to see the humanity in others became their undoing. A teacher I once knew lost her temper in a classroom, snapping at a student for fidgeting during a lesson, her voice sharp as she barked, "Sit still." She thought it'd assert her control, make the class fall in line, and show them who was boss. Later, she learned the boy's father had passed away just days before. He wasn't being defiant, he was grieving, his restless movements a silent cry for understanding, a way to cope with a pain too big for his small body to hold. She wasn't fired, but the guilt ate her alive, changed her forever. She learned, grew, softened, became a better teacher for it. Miss Whitmore didn't learn. Not until the ground vanished beneath her, leaving her to fall with nothing to catch her, no safety net to break her descent. Her collapse isn't just justice served, it's a mirror, reflecting what happens when you let pride blind you to the people you're meant to serve. When you forget that your authority is borrowed, not owned, that it can be taken away as quickly as it was given. Let's walk through her downfall step by painful step, feel the weight of each moment as it lands. She's standing curbside now, the airport buzzing around her with the relentless rhythm of travel. Pilots chatting about their next routes, sharing a laugh over a cup of coffee, families reuniting with hugs and laughter, their voices bright with joy. Flight attendants rolling their suitcases with crisp efficiency, their uniforms pristine, their steps confident. She's invisible to them now, a former queen stripped of her crown, her throne toppled, her kingdom reduced to ash. Her phone buzzes incessantly in her pocket, each notification a fresh stab of dread. She pulls it out, her hands shaking as she unlocks the screen. HR emails flood her inbox. Unpaid suspension, effective immediately, pending a formal review of your conduct on Flight 637. The words cold and clinical, a formality that means nothing. Then, James from HR calls, his voice cold and final, cutting through her haze of panic. Zotten's already decided. There won't be a review. You're done. She tries Elliot, a senior administrator she's known for years, someone she'd considered an ally in the corporate maze of the airline. He'll make sure you never work in aviation again if you fight this, he warns, his tone heavy with pity, a pity that stings worse than anger. Her allies have turned into walls, offering no shelter, no way back, their voices echoing the same finality as Zayden's decision. The videos have gone viral now, shared across platforms, racking up views by the minute. Her hand, Cairo's cry, Amira's shock, all captured in a damning loop that plays over and over for the world to judge, a public execution of her reputation. Comments pour in like a tidal wave. She deserves this. What a disgrace. I'd never fly that airline again. Each one burying her deeper in a grave she dug herself. Each one a nail in the coffin of her career, her legacy, her name. She stumbles into a taxi, her legs weak, her mind a storm of panic and regret, a chaotic swirl of thoughts she can't quiet. Just drive, she mutters, her voice barely above a whisper. The city lights blurring past the window as she sinks into the seat, her body heavy with the weight of her new reality. Regret gnaws at her now, not just for the slap, but for the years she spent treating passengers like pawns on her chessboard, obstacles to her perfection rather than people to serve. Humans with stories and struggles of their own. She'd forgotten why she was there in the first place, to care, to comfort, to make the journey better for those in her charge, not to rule over it like a dictator, not to enforce her will with a cold, unyielding hand. She pulls out her phone again, scrolling through the messages piling up. Coworkers texting, saw the video, good luck, their words dripping with sarcasm rather than support. A bitter reminder of the bridges she's burned over the years. Zotten's official statement looms large on every news outlet, a headline that sears itself into her mind. Decisive action has been taken. We do not tolerate misconduct. There's no mention of a review, no hint of leniency, no chance for redemption. He's scrubbed her from the aviation world with a single stroke of his pen, a decision made with the same quiet authority he showed on the plane. Elliot's warning echoes in her mind, a haunting refrain. He flies commercials to test us, to see how we treat his passengers. You failed. That's the gut punch that lands hardest, the truth that cuts deepest. Zotten's power isn't in his money or his private jets, it's in his intent, his purpose. He sits with his passengers to guard the soul of his empire, to ensure his vision isn't tainted by someone who's lost sight of what it means to serve. Miss Whitmore wielded rules like a whip, enforcing her will with a cold hand. Zayden wields purpose like a sword, cutting through her facade with precision, leaving her exposed and broken. She's alone now, truly alone, standing at the curb as the taxi pulls away, the wind biting at her skin, cutting through her uniform, or what used to be her uniform, now just a piece of fabric hanging on her like a shroud, a reminder of what she's lost. Zodin's car, a sleek black sedan, pulls away in the distance. Amira beside him, Cairo asleep in her arms, a family intact despite the storm that raged around them. Miss Whitmore watches them go, her hands clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms as she fights the urge to scream, to run after them, to beg for a second chance she knows she'll never get. She's become a cautionary tale, a story whispered in break rooms and taught in training sessions. Don't be her. Don't forget who you're here for. Her legacy isn't one of excellence anymore. It's a warning, a lesson carved in the rubble of her career. A reminder to every flight attendant, every employee, every person in a position of power, your authority is borrowed and it can be taken away in an instant. She collapses onto a bench, her legs too weak to hold her up any longer, her mind spinning with what-ifs that will never come true, each one a dagger in her heart. What if she'd paused, seeing Amira's exhaustion, Cairo's innocence? What if she'd chosen kindness over control, understanding over authority? What if she'd remembered that her job was to serve, not to rule? But it's too late for what-ifs, too late for regrets that come after the fall. Zayden didn't need to yell or make a scene to end her. He simply decided, and that was enough. His quiet authority more powerful than any outburst could ever be. That's the true power she never understood, the power she could never hope to match, the power that leaves her here alone, with nothing but the ashes of her own making. So what do we take from the wreckage of this story, from the ashes of Miss Whitmore's fall? Here at Top Point, we're not just here to tell tales, we're here to dig into the rubble and find the gold that lies beneath, the lessons that linger long after the story ends. Miss Whitmore's collapse wasn't just about a single slap, a fleeting moment of frustration that spiraled out of control. No, it was the culmination of a lifetime of choices. A towering pile of pride that she'd been stacking higher and higher with every passing year, every passenger she dismissed, every moment she chose control over compassion. She believed she was untouchable, perched atop her throne in that first-class cabin, her uniform a shield, her rules a scepter, her authority a crown she thought could never be taken away. But power, as we've seen, is a trickster. It feels solid, unshakable, until it turns to dust beneath your feet, leaving you with nothing but the consequences of your own making. Zodin Gray flipped that illusion on its head, didn't he? He showed us what real power looks like. Not loud, not flashy, but quiet, steady, and purposeful. A force that doesn't need to shout to be heard. He didn't need to yell or throw his weight around to make his point. His presence, his decision, his calm resolve spoke louder than any outburst ever could. He was a father protecting his son, a leader safeguarding his vision, and in doing so he reminded us that true authority doesn't come from a title or a badge, it comes from integrity. From using your influence to lift others up, not tear them down, to protect those who need it most rather than to punish those who challenge your ego. And then there's Amira, the quiet force in the eye of this storm whose words cut deeper than any rulebook ever could. You don't get to decide who deserves kindness. Think about that for a second. Let it sink in. Kindness isn't a choice you make when it's convenient, when the person in front of you fits your idea of deserving. It's a duty, a thread that holds us together as humans, a responsibility we carry no matter the circumstance. Miss Whitmore forgot that, saw Cairo as a problem to fix, not a child to care for, and that's where she lost everything, her job, her reputation, her identity, all gone in the blink of an eye, erased as swiftly as Zodin's decision came down. But her story isn't just a cautionary tale. It's a mirror for all of us, a reflection of our own moments of weakness, our own failures to see the humanity in others. How often do we let our frustrations get the better of us? How often do we snap at the cashier, the waiter, the stranger on the street, because we're tired, stressed, or just too wrapped up in our own world to see theirs? We've all been there. I know I have. I've barked at a barista for a slow coffee, only to see the exhaustion in her eyes and feel that pang of regret, that sinking feeling of having failed to be the person I want to be. I've snapped at a coworker for a missed deadline, only to learn later they were dealing with a personal crisis I knew nothing about. Miss Whitmore didn't pause, didn't see, and now she's paying the price. A price far steeper than any of my small regrets, but a price rooted in the same failure. The failure to see the person, not the problem. That's the lesson here, etched in the rubble of her downfall, a lesson we can all carry forward. Pause, breathe, and see the humanity in front of you. See the person, not the problem, the struggle, not the noise. Miss Whitmore didn't, and her empire is rubble now, her name a warning whispered in training rooms, her legacy a lesson in what not to be. But we can choose differently, can't we? We can pause before we snap, think before we judge, and act with kindness even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. On a plane, in an office, in line at the grocery store, in every interaction we have, how we treat people echoes far beyond any title we hold, any power we think we wield, any badge we wear. Xaden didn't destroy her. He didn't need to. He just held up the mirror, let her own choices do the shattering, let her own actions bring her down. That's accountability, raw and unfiltered, a reminder that the choices we make, the way we treat others, shape the world we live in, and the one we might lose if we forget what truly matters. So the next time you're on a flight, in a meeting, or just walking through the chaos of your daily life, remember this story. Remember Miss Whitmore's fall, Xaden's quiet strength, Amira's cutting truth. Remember that the way you treat others shapes not just their day, but your own future, your own legacy. If this story hit you like it hit me, if it shook you to your core and left you thinking, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever seen a power shift like this? Seen someone's pride lead them to ruin? Subscribe to Top Point for more stories that shake you awake and lift you higher, that challenge you to be better, to see deeper, to live with kindness and purpose. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your heart steady, and your actions true.